guys, I'm Stephanie and welcome back to Little Mitch Stitches. Today I'm going to show you what I've been working on so far for crochet in May and also share with you my crochet origin story or how I learned to crochet. The first thing that I've been working on is my crochet granny square blanket. It is one giant granny square, just going, never ending until I run out of yarn. I have worked on it. This brown stripe here is where I was during the knit-a-thon. So everything from there to the edge now is what I've worked on since then. And it doesn't look like it's that much, but when you consider that this blanket is so giant already, it is a lot. It takes about, I would say somewhere between around 20 grams. Like a 20 gram mini skein will get me one round around the whole square. Some of these are 20 gram mini skeins. I don't know if they even made it all the way around. So it is a lot more than it looks like, but I've been working on this a lot in the mornings when I wake up or when I'm watching TV with my husband. So this has been my nice, easy project. The second thing I've worked on, but barely, is my crochet monkey sweater or my sock monkey sweater. So this was pretty much done 2 years ago. And all I needed to do, I had a couple ends hanging, so those are woven in now. And I did this red border, and that's it. That's all I've done. Woven a couple ends, maybe 5, and did the crochet border. So what's left is, oh, I did crochet the ears. I have to sew them on, so it will get little eyes and ears at the top of the hood. All of that needs to be done, and that's what I'm going to be working on later while I am telling you my crochet origin story. But this, I even have, there they are. I even have pins already marking where the buttons need to go. I literally just need to sew them. The third thing I've been working on first was my little swatch. You can hear the crinkling. It's that enjoyable to listen to as I work on it. That's the noise that this stuff makes when I am working on it. This is VHS tape. I am crocheting a market bag with VHS tape from inside. I don't know, maybe this was like Cinderella or some other Disney movie from when I was a kid that I took apart. This swatch was me just playing around. I think I used a US L hook. I don't know for sure. I have it sitting out on my table. Just playing around to see what stitches I liked. So I'm going to hold it up nice and close. But the stitches I used are single crochet down here, half double in the middle, and then double at the top. And it's very much a Goldilocks moment. Right down the middle is what I liked the best. The fabrics really don't look, I mean, they look different, but they don't look that much different that it matters that much. But the stitch that felt easiest to do with this weird material was the half double crochet. So that's what I'm going to use for my market bag. Now, like I said, the half double crochet was the easiest to maneuver. This stuff doesn't move very well. I only have metal hooks. I don't crochet that frequently where I've experimented with other material hooks, so I might look into getting something else. The metal wasn't slippery enough, which is weird because usually metal is the one that's going to be more slippery, but I actually feel like this would work better on a wood hook. So I might look into getting a wood hook in this size. I can make it work, but this is the black that you can see is the VHS tape. So it really isn't that much on there, which it's so thin that when it's rolled up like this, it doesn't look like there's a lot, but there's actually a lot more than you would think, because I did this whole thing and I thought I would be running out. This was one of the smallest ones I had. So I actually have a lot of material, so I might be able to make a lot of bags. So I may experiment with getting a different material hook. I don't know if wood is going to be the best. I don't want to go crazy buying all these different materials because I really do prefer metal, but maybe for this project something different will be a better choice. After I did my swatch and found out that I liked half double crochet, I decided to start designing a little market bag. And my idea originally was to have it very open on the bottom and kind of like a mandala or like a doily, where it's just very open and holy, so that any debris that gets into a market bag could just fall right out. That isn't what wound up happening as I started working on it, and I actually just went with a much simpler pattern. I used a little mini from my Christmas advent calendar to crochet up this little sampler. So this is like a little mini of what I want to do. And the bottom, I just did rounds of half double crochet to make a flat bottom. And then I did one round of like double crochet clusters. It's hard to tell on here. And I was experimenting. This round was a little more lacy and open. I didn't like how it looked. I wound up not doing that. I worked the rest of the way up, just repeating rounds of half double crochet and one round of the double crochet cluster. Just a few repeats of that, and then made a handle. Voila, done. So this, I figured, uses up some yarn. I can give it to Jax for his toys. I actually am going to use it as a little ball cozy, I think, though. But it was a great little quickie project to see how it would all work out. I did measure my swatch. I don't remember what the gauge was, but that's how I chose how many stitches to do. A round was how many I was getting in my swatch, but I don't remember what the exact number was. I have it all written down in my notes somewhere. But that way I can get a decent size market bag, but not too giant. The problem I've had with market bags I've crocheted before is that the moment you put something in them, they get so heavy and they pull and the whole bag stretches thin. And sometimes people want that, but that's not what I'm looking for. So for reference, here is the last ball that I'm doing for my granny square blanket. And I don't remember how many minis are in here. It's a little bit larger than a 100-gram skein would be, but I'm going to put it in my little mini bag and see how it fits. It's like the perfect little skein keeper. So at least it has a use. It could fit a really giant orange though too. Maybe a grapefruit. The last project that I've been working on in my crochet this month is my crochet sock. And I have to say I am loving it and hating it at the same time. So I'm loving it just because it's going so fast. I mean, I did this in like just a couple days. This is my sock. There is a heel turn. There's a heel flap. I've already worked on the gusset, but the problem is my gauge. So I've never crocheted a sock, and I don't crochet enough projects that need a certain measurement that I know what my gauge is. I don't know if I crochet tight or loose. I don't know if I should use the hook called for or try something different. So I started with the hook it called for. No, I didn't start with the hook that it called for. It calls for a D. I cannot find a single D. I can find a C. I have 5 E's. I have multiple F's. I don't have a single D hook laying around somewhere. It's probably in a project somewhere. Who knows what project it is, because I don't crochet enough, especially on things that small. It's probably with wedding dress supplies, because that's the only time I crochet anything that small. So I looked in the pattern and the gauge is 22 single crochets over, I don't even know, however many rows. And I'm thinking, okay, in knitting, we always know that if we are knitting in the round, we swatch in the round. And that would usually say however many rounds per inch. This says rows per inch. So I'm thinking, do I swatch in the round or do I not? I'm going to swatch in the round. And by swatch, I mean I did like 5 rows. I didn't go crazy on it because I figured it doesn't have to be super, super exact. Maybe it does need to be super, super exact. I don't know. I'm just winging it. So I crochet a few rounds, and I do like a fake in the round where you crochet across, bring the yarn around, and just go to the other side, crochet across, bring the yarn around, kind of like how you can do in knitting where you fake a knitting in the round swatch. That was a pain in the butt, but I realized that on a C, because I couldn't find a D, and as a loose knitter, I'm thinking I'm probably a loose crocheter too. It was way too tight. It calls for 22 stitches. I was getting like 28. So I skipped a D and went to an E hook. So I skipped to the next crochet hook I had. Some of them aren't labeled letters. Some of them, I think somewhere in there I had an extra size that didn't correspond to a letter, because I did 3 swatches and the last one I did was an E. And I still was a little tight, but I thought, you know what? I want a little negative ease. If I'm a little tight, it's okay. Oh, and by that point I gave up on swatching it around. I just crocheted back and forth in rows. So I definitely crochet tighter in the round. It must make a difference somehow. I'm going to experiment with that a little bit. I have like a little bit of a hypothesis and want to check on what's happening with that kind of thing. But I got the hook that I wanted to use. I used a little mini leftover for my cuff. And here's already where it starts. So it says to crochet the cuff for about 9 inches. I want to say the number was slightly stretched. Okay. You want a little negative ease in your cuff. I have a lot of stretch there. I stretched it a little, made it to 9 inches. Good. It's done flat, and then you're supposed to sew it up at the end, but whatever. I just slip stitched it together, because why would you save that to the end to sew it? Just slip stitch it closed. Anyway, then I grabbed the pink yarn that I'm going to use, which is from a homespun house, and just start working in the round. And I'm going and I'm going and I'm going. And I go to try it on. I probably had about maybe this much. I go to try it on. I could barely get it over my foot. And I couldn't get it off. I had to have Kyle pull it off for me. Like, it was that tight. So I said, okay, let me just go up a size. I work on it. I'm able to get it over my foot a little easier. Well, last night, I crocheted all of this, and this morning I said, let me try it on. I can get it on, but it doesn't fit. It's definitely still too tight. But the heel flap, which I love the fabric that it makes, it's not tall enough. It was either like about 2.5, 2.25 inches it wanted. I've got to go to 3 because I just need more room in my foot. When I had this on, if this was here, this was like pulling all the way back. Like, it didn't really align. I just need more room here. And I find that with knitting socks too. That's why short row heels don't fit me at all. But alas, again, I'm going to rip this out. So now I'm going to be on a G hook. The pattern calls for a D. That's a lot of difference. Like, I use a G hook with like DK weight yarn. I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. But I am really loving it because this goes so fast. So the other thing was, I didn't do the sock the way they wanted you to. I was spiraling it instead of ending around and then starting a row and then ending around and slip stitching to start a new row. And I think that's messing me up a little bit in the heel. This is where I do my decreases for the gusset. It has moved from here down towards the bottom of the foot, but then on the other side, it's moving towards the top of the foot. So I think I need to make it align better. When you're looking at the crochet, it actually looks like it's going in a perfectly great straight line, but I think that's really messing something up. It's going to wind up under my foot eventually on this one. And this one is on top of my foot. So I have to stop and rethink that one a little bit more. Anyway, I'm loving the socks, but hating that they're not fitting. I'm really excited because it's going really fast. They're not as thick as I would have thought that they would be. So it might be a good type of sock for Kyle, because Kyle wears through all of his heels very, very fast. So a little strength there might be good for him. Or maybe I'll just darn his socks with some crochet and see how that holds up. You know what? This might not be good for Kyle. I just noticed this. In the heel turn, they're very holy. Where the, basically what would be short rows is. You can kind of see my finger back there. Those are pretty big holes, especially this one. That's my skin. So those are the projects that I have been working on, and now I may have been talked into another one. Haven't touched my dress. I think with my dress I'm just going to cut the bottom off and redo the bottom. I don't think I'm going to do anything with the doilies that have dirty beads. The project that I may have been talked into recently is Ziggy Interrupted, which is a knit along that Kristy Glass is going to be hosting at the end of the month. I wasn't going to do it originally, but then when I heard she's not officially starting, people are starting now. She's not officially starting the knit along until the 24th. I thought, well, maybe by then I'll have my other projects done. I can jump in, and I'm loving, like I said with the socks, how fast it's going. So it is using up my yarn fast, and I have too much yarn. And right now my yarn hutch that should hold all of my yarn, but a lot of it's not in there right now. It should hold all my yarn. Is in the room right behind me, which is currently Jax's room. So Jax's room is half storage, half Jax, half yarn. That's a lot of halves. It's a lot of halves because there's too much stuff in that room that shouldn't be in there. So my yarn hutch is actually going to be coming out of there soon and get nice and organized, but I got to get through this yarn. I have too much. I am the first to admit that. So I was thinking, what do I have that I can do this beautiful wrap scarf pattern with? A lot of people are doing their advent sets or minis, and I don't have enough of that to really make that work. I used to have a lot of fingering yarn, and I still do have a lot of fingering weight yarn, but a lot of it is crazy colors because I was always buying one skein at a festival or an event and thinking I'll do socks with it. My sock drawer is full. I don't need any more socks, and some of the people I knit socks for don't want crazy color socks. So I have a lot of colors that don't go together, and the ones that do go together are currently in this blanket. So this would have been a good option for Ziggy Interrupted, but oh well, too late for that. So I was thinking, what else do I have a lot of that could go into this? It's a pattern that calls for a fingering weight yarn. I could do it in a different weight, but I don't really have a lot of substantial quantities of yarn in the other weights. Most of my stash is fingering weight, and what isn't fingering weight is probably already earmarked for projects. So I used to say that I spin my yarn and then I just hoard my hand spun because I don't know what to do with it. So I think I'm going to make a Ziggy Interrupted out of my hand spun, and also some farm yarns and other random things that I have that kind of fit the color palette. So when I first started spinning, my favorite thing to spin was Long Island Livestock, which is now Long Island Yarn and Farms, 100% llama bumps. She sells her fiber wrapped up in this ball, which is great. It's perfect to go and just like spin right off of. And when I first started spinning, this is actually the first hand spun that I made on my wheel. My goal had been to make something to be a similar weight to Madeline Tosh Merino Light. And I did attain that in some spots, but as the first thing I used on my wheel, even though I was a good spinner on my drop spindle, using a wheel is totally different. So you see I have these, that is certainly not fingering weight right there. And I've got these like coiled spots and these crazy sections. So it's sat in my stash. It actually sat on the bobbin literally for years because I didn't even want to look at it because I was so disappointed it didn't come out the way I wanted. So this is still a single. I never even plied it. So I'm thinking this might be my little pop of color. And then the other thing I did, the second thing I spun, I don't remember exactly which color it was, but I bought, every time I would go to an event, I would buy Long Island Yarn and Farms bumps of 100% llama, and it was the easiest thing to spin on my wheel. There was no fighting this fiber. It would just slip right out of your hand if you weren't paying too close of attention. So this was up in my yarn hutch. I have a whole section of just my hand spun. So I have this one, and because I used to just buy one thing at each fiber festival, they'd always be different colors, and I didn't care what color it was. I wanted to amass enough of this 100% llama that I would spin it all up and then do a project with it, some unknown project with it all one day. So the problem is there's only this one. Where's the rest of it? Who knows? Could be in this room somewhere, could still be in storage at my dad's house. I'm going to be searching. I have until the end of the month to try to find. I know I have 2 other skeins that I spun up. One is a dark brown and one is like a kind of silvery looking color. I have to try to find them because this is it. This is when I use all of these skeins that I spun together in one project. So then here's the rest of the yarn. This is what I dug out of my yarn hutch. Some hand spun, some farm yarn, and just some other things. If I can try to hold it up and not spill it. So I also have some, I don't remember what this was. It was camel, half baby camel and half merino from Anzula. I bought this at Pearl Soho during a New York City yarn crawl. I have this skein of Jade Sapphire Cashmere that I got on discount at a yarn shop because there were cuts in it. I think it got cut when the box was being opened or a bag was being opened or snagged on something. It's 100% cashmere, so it's a little delicate, especially since it's so thin. It's a lace weight. I don't know what weight some of these yarns are. This one is, I'd probably say between a sport and a DK. My llama one is probably a light fingering. This one's every weight under the sun. This one I have, I don't know what this fiber content is. This is another one that I spun on my drop spindle, I think, before I had my wheel. And my weights are all over the place in here again as well. We've got some are super thin. Right next to it is super fluffy. Oh, I guess it's a 3-ply. Look at that. The plies are coming apart. So I've got this. I think it was a wool and a silk, but I honestly don't remember. That's it for my hand spun in the basket. And then I also, oh well, obviously, this is Jade Sapphire, not my hand spun. I have from the very, very first Vogue Knitting Live ever in New York City when it was at the Hilton, from Furnace Mountain Alpacas. I don't even know if that's if they still make yarn or whatnot. I'll have to look it up and see. This sparkly alpaca yarn that I bought, it is 70% Suri alpaca and 30% nylon. I think she had this knit up as a sock sample in her booth, but I had wanted to use it for a pattern for Harry Potter's invisibility cloak that I had in a book, and I never got around to it because I don't really need an invisibility cloak in my normal life. And now I do, maybe to hide from my children, but it's just sat there for over 10 years now. This past January was Vogue's first virtual New York time slot, and this would have been their 11th one in person, I think. No, maybe 11th or 12th. I can't remember now, but this would have been more than 10 years ago. I bought this. This is why I need to use my yarn. This is why I have to use up my stash. This is another former Vogue Knitting Live purchase. Solitude wool. I had bought this and fiber, and I did spin the fiber up. So I have this from Solitude Wool, Icelandic wool, and I had actually bought this to knit, I think, a hat to go with a marled yarn like this that I had bought from Long Island Yarn and Farm. I knit the Long Island Yarn and Farm into a cowl and never knit this into the hat. And I feel like I bought this forever ago. Didn't know anything about sheep breeds. I feel like I've heard Icelandic wool is not the softest, but this actually feels really soft. This could possibly go into Ziggy. This is a light worsted. That's what I mean. These weights are all over the place. The last thing that I grabbed that kind of goes with the color palette is some really old Knit Picks Surrey alpaca. My thinking was I could pair this with the Icelandic to soften it up, but I don't think it needs it. But this is, I think they considered this a bulky at the time. But this is also for sure over 10 years old. So now I just added that possible project to my lap. But if I get through it, I mean, that'll be great to get rid of some of this yarn that has been in my stash for way too long. It's got to go. I know I say that a lot. But first, let's get rid of this monkey sweater. Before we get started, I just wanted to share that the name of this pattern is Adult Sock Monkey Hoodie and Socks by MJ's Off the Hook Designs. I did not make the socks, although I did buy yarn for them. I chose not to make them because I didn't think I'd get enough wear out of them originally. There's also a children's version, which is what I had made for Jax for Halloween a few years ago. It's a separate pattern, but pretty much the same shape and design, just in a smaller version. My crochet story begins years before I learned to crochet. When I was young, maybe around 6 or 7, my maternal grandmother was very into doing plastic canvas needlepoint, and she would let me help her with the pieces while she babysat my brother and me. She taught me how to do the stitching, how to cut the pieces out, and eventually, scarily, trusted me enough to use a utility knife to cut pieces out for her. This was probably my first exposure to crafting with yarn. When I was, I think, 8, I started going to summer camp and learned to make friendship bracelets with embroidery floss. That's pretty much all we had to do all day while we were at camp, other than play kickball, which I hated. This hobby was much more portable than the plastic canvas, so I began to take my projects and collection of floss with me everywhere. I was definitely visibly crafting as a kid from then on, and always had these with me as something to keep me busy. All through my childhood, I remember all of my older cousins getting married on my dad's side of the family. And at each wedding, my aunt would make the bride a Barbie with a wedding dress that she had crocheted. And as a kid who loved Barbie, all I wanted was to get married so that I could have my wedding Barbie. Obviously not realizing that as an adult getting married, I wasn't really going to play with a Barbie, but all I wanted was that Barbie. In the summer of 1998, we spent about a week and a half at my aunt's farm in upstate New York as a vacation and for yet another cousin's wedding. And this will always be a favorite memory for me because we were allowed to run all over the place, playing with our cousins, exploring the woods, having the crazy unsupervised freedom we would never experience back home in the suburbs. We were literally just running around. Nobody really paid attention to what we were doing. We could just do whatever we wanted, running through the woods, finding creeks, throwing rocks. It was also when my aunt taught me to crochet. To this day, I have no idea what prompted her to teach me and my cousin Liz to crochet. I don't know if we asked. Did she feel bad that we were the only two girls running around with a big group of sometimes very annoying boys? Did she want to pass on something that had been handed down to her? I've never asked her, and she may not even remember it now. I don't even remember her teaching us. I do remember sitting with Liz in the apple orchard practicing. I remember being jealous that Liz had a good color yarn and that I had an ugly tan color. I remember my aunt asking why I wasn't counting my stitches because, like so many new crocheters, I was making a trapezoid when I was supposed to be making a rectangle, slowly losing stitches as I missed the last stitch of probably almost every row. I don't remember working on my crochet too much, but when I went home, I do remember starting a blanket. I chained either 200 or 250 stitches for the width of my bed, and then I would single crochet 2 rows before changing colors. I intended to put fringe on the sides so I wouldn't have to weave my ends in. And as you probably expected, I quickly grew bored of this project. My aunt only taught us to chain and single crochet flat. I didn't know what a pattern was, so the next thing I decided was that I was going to make some dresses for my American Girl dolls. I made a chain long enough to wrap around her body and started crocheting a tube up to her armpit. Then I started working flat on the front stitches for her chest. There were straps, but I don't remember exactly what they were. Probably one over each shoulder, and I probably just single crocheted them to the back side. Each dress had a matching headband, and I proudly showed them off at Thanksgiving, thinking I was on my way to making Barbie wedding dresses. That didn't happen though. I'd make a scarf every now and then or put a stripe on my blanket, but high school kept me busy enough that I didn't pursue crochet any further or really too many other crafts outside of school. In college, I learned to knit and focus on that for quite a while. By senior year of college, I discovered the Stitch and Bitch books by Debbie Stoller, which led me to Happy Hooker. I finally learned to do stitches beyond the single crochet 8 years later from that book. I quickly fell in love with double crochet. I feel like most people like half double more than double, but I liked double, and made some more intricate scarves, baby blankets, and hats over the next few years. I never did anything too detailed until my wedding dress, but that is a story for another day. All right, it's all done. I'm standing on my tippy toes. I still can't fit it all in. But my sweater. Do you like it?
Yeah.
What do I look like?
You look like a monkey.
So I've been wearing it the past couple days with and without it being finished. I'm very warm in it right now. So I'm actually going to get this thing off. It is a nice warm day today. Thanks for joining me on my little adventure sewing these buttons on. And if you liked this video, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye. Did I do an e-hook? I must have done an e-hook. So the project that I might have been talked into is Ziggy. Oh shoot, what the hell's the name of it? Coffee. Oh, coffee, I love you. I'm gonna totally forget I put that coffee there and kick it over later. Focus on the yarn. Oh boy. We have a co-host today. Her name is Roxy. Hi, Roxy. You look so thrilled to be here today.